The night everything tilted didn't start with thunder or destiny. It started with a cheap kitchen phone skittering across laminate, like a nervous beetle buzzing and buzzing, while I was elbow-deep in dishes, and my 6-year-old Zoe climbed a chair like a pirate boarding a ship and said, "Hello," in that brave whisper kids use when they think they might be in trouble. Then a man's voice came through so cold, it felt like the fridge door was open. "If you kept the baby to squeeze me for money, forget it. I've paid enough, don't call me again." Click. And the silence after that was louder than the words, because before the line went dead, he said a name he should have swallowed, Emily, which happens to be the middle part of my name, Emmeline, and Zoe heard baby money mistake and looked at me like she had just seen behind the curtain and didn't like the show. Harbor City was doing its usual thing outside. Sirens far off a bus sighing somebody's TV laughing at a joke that didn't land. And inside I pulled my hair into a bun for the night shift, trying to act like the air wasn't heavier. But kids smell weather in your chest, you know what I mean? So she asked, "Mom, do I have a dad?" And I said, "What I've said for years. We don't talk about that, not angry, just finished." And she nodded like, "Okay." But her eyes stayed open in that way that means the conversation just moved underground. After I left, she dragged the family album off the top shelf, the one I pretend I don't keep. Birthdays with store-brand cake, first apartments with patchy paint, sunlight borrowed through someone else's window. And tucked behind a plastic sleeve like a secret, with its back to the wall, she found the picture I had been trying not to know about me, younger and unbruised in a hospital corridor, hand on my belly, because I was already talking to the future, and next to me a tall man in a charcoal suit with a smile that looked like honesty. If you hadn't learned the language yet, not touching me, hands in his pockets, like they belonged to a richer person. On the back my handwriting, DH, April, and my brilliant child did the math only kids can do. She slid the photo into her coloring book, like evidence, wrote a letter in crayon, neat enough to pass a bank exam. "Dear Mr. Hawthorne, my name is Zoe. I think you might be my dad. I don't want money. I want to know why my mom looks sad when she thinks I'm not looking. If you are my dad, fix it with the truth." And she mailed it to Hawthorne Plaza, tallest glass tooth in the Harbor City Smile, because on a school field trip, the guide said, "If you ever get lost, look for the name in gold." A week gave us nothing. Then another, until something came that felt worse than nothing. An envelope thick as a threat. Hawthorne Media Group, Legal Affairs. To whom it may concern, Mr. Daniel Hawthorne. Has no comment. Matter closed. Further contact is harassment, signed by someone whose signature spends more than I make in a month. Zoe read over my elbow and whispered, "They're threatening us," and I said, "What I learned the hard way, men like him don't swing. They hire other people to hold the bat." Then I told her the story. I buried how I was a nurse at Harbor General and met a dying woman with a husband who wore pressed suits and praised like aftershave. How he offered help until help meant accountability. How when I told him I was pregnant, he told me I was mistaken. How a courier brought a confidentiality agreement, fat with zeros, and I never took a dime, and somehow still lost my job, my friends, my good name, like truth was a bill I couldn't afford. And Zoe listened, curled up like a small fortress, then asked if he knew about her. And I said he knows anything that threatens him, which is the same as saying yes. The apartment felt smaller after that. You ever notice how truth shrinks a room before it frees it? And while I was busy managing the heaviness, Zoe checked out a library book on DNA, pulled a strand of her hair, and one from my brush, zipped them up with labels, Zoe Brooks and Maya Brooks, and wrote a second note. "You can ignore me, but you can't ignore science." Then dropped it in the blue mailbox on 17th and Alder, like a kid posting a dare to gravity. And here's the part people never believe: the destiny didn't arrive on a stallion. It arrived as a zip code. Mistake, the envelope got routed to the Harbor Center for Family Justice, where a lawyer named Carla Ruiz keeps calm like a superpower. She knocked on our door in a gray suit with eyes that had seen storms and said, "Your daughter sent something to the wrong place on the right day." I believe her. We ran the samples against what we could, and Maya, there's a 99-point-something match with Daniel Hawthorne. Yeah, that happened. I put the kettle on because sometimes hot water is the only door you can open without breaking anything. And Carla laid out a plan. Quiet first. Gather witnesses, build the pattern file with the commission. Protect you, and Zoe expect denials, expect threats, make it expensive to erase you. And I said yes faster than I say yes for myself. Because mothers do that, we sign up for fire if the other choice is our kid growing up thinking smoke is normal. The next weeks lived like new weather meetings in a diner that still warmed plates, in a retired head nurse's living room that smelled like lemon oil, and prayer in a church office where the carpet had seen more confession than the priest people spoke. A janitor remembered a corridor argument and a voice that could bruise glass. The head nurse remembered a termination without paperwork, math. There was even an old voicemail: tell her to stop asking questions or she's out. And then one night, a yellow envelope slid under our door like a guilty thought inside a scan of an internal memo, my name bold, a payment to a third-party HR vendor, and the words, "Full purge," no trace erasure in 12-point font, and that paper burned me colder than any winter because I could smell what it meant. I wasn't just ignored, I was deleted on purpose. News doesn't ask permission. It crawls under doors. A rumor hit TV, a denial hit louder. Baseless, defamatory. Hawthorne stands tall, and that night he called me M. You always were impulsive. Thought you'd moved on, raised. The kids started over now, this digging up ghosts, and I said the line I had been practicing inside my bones. I didn't start this, your silence did. He tried the money card. Do you want a settlement? And I said, it has never been about money, it's about my daughter knowing she mattered and me not hiding anymore. Then he said, be careful what you wake up, and I hung up, because I know a threat when I hear one with cologne. Carla connected us to a whistleblower inside Hawthorne Media who called themselves North Star. They had emails, NDAs, complaint tickets disappeared like socks in a dryer. HR as a wall, not a door, and the State Labor Commission opened a formal investigation. If you've ever had your name written by a system without being labeled a problem, you know the feeling, not joy, just a kind of standing up. You didn't know. Your spine still remembered. I did one careful interview with a journalist named Tessa Nguyen. No makeup, no violin. I said, I don't want pity, I want accountability. And the story landed like a stone in a lake circles. We didn't expect, then came the smear. A tabloid dug up an ER visit from when I was 22. Panic attack after 2 jobs and no sleep. And suddenly I was unstable, manipulative, unfit, and I could have fought it on a bigger stage, but I went smaller. I spoke at the South Harbor Women's Center, folding chairs, cider in paper cups. A volunteer filmed on a cracked phone. I said, I'm not a headline. I'm a mother whose kid asked a question I couldn't outrun, and the video went everywhere because truth sometimes likes bad lighting. People wrote that they felt less alone, and the Department of Justice called Agent Carter Miles suit that knew too much. He said they'd been circling Hawthorne for months. My case drew a map, widen this with us, which also meant new danger. Because the day after a photo of Zoe outside school appeared on our kitchen counter, no note, just a message any mother can read. We see you. And we moved to a safe house with blinds that shut like prayer. I recorded a video deposition in warm light, with Zoe coloring at a side table, pretending not to listen. I told it all. The corridor, the suit, the hush, the memo. And when I finished, she climbed into my lap and said that was your roar, which is exactly what it felt like. And someone leaked that video, and the city saw it, and the board at Hawthorne Media did their math. Lorraine Pike looked at the numbers, the memos, the fire, and asked Daniel to step down. He tried to sell them a new kind of gravity, and they voted for the real one. He resigned, indictments followed like rain. The roof had been holding back, and the arrest footage hit. The private elevator, the face that used to own every room, learning how to ask a bailiff for directions. Trial isn't a montage. It's long chairs and longer days, lawyers making weather out of words. But the pattern held. Money pressure, retaliation, deletion. And when I took the stand, I didn't perform. I just said the sentence that wouldn't let me sleep. I was supposed to be a footnote. That's how men like him stay authors, not just power, silence. And I told them my daughter asked me if she had a dad, and I decided I couldn't keep teaching her to live in a room without windows. The verdict came down like a door, finally clicking into the frame, guilty on all the things that matter and the ones people pretend don't. The sentence long enough that I could breathe, short enough to keep dinner tables arguing. Victory didn't feel like a parade. It felt like sleeping without checking the window twice, like pancakes on a Tuesday, because Zoe wanted pancakes on a Tuesday, like laughing at nothing and not flinching when I realized I was happy. It didn't end at the gavel. It never does. But we opened a room at the South Harbor Center called the Voice Room with a lion mural Zoe painted, and under it, in careful block letters, she wrote, "Truth is louder than fear." Laws started moving. More people spoke up. Even a young security guard from Hawthorne Plaza stood at a community meeting with his badge still on and said, "I saw things and stayed quiet. I'm here now. Use me." And the room didn't absolve him. It assigned him, which is better. And yeah, there are still folks who say, I ruined a good man's life for a payday. I never took that. A panic attack makes you unreliable forever. That poor women love the spotlight until the bill shows up. I don't audition for people who don't believe their own eyes. But most days, Zoe walks to school without checking over her shoulder, and I call patients by their names, not their charts, and we keep the blinds half open on purpose. And sometimes I still think about that first phone call, how small it sounded, how far it fell, how we followed it down and found the bottom wasn't an end, just a floor we could finally stand on. So tell me this. Do you think power can be held accountable without being destroyed? Or is destruction the only language it hears? Have you watched someone get erased at work and stayed quiet? Or did you speak and pay for it? Drop your take in the comments. Argue with me if you need to share this. If it hits something tender, somebody out there is listening to a phone buzz like a trapped fly right now, wondering if that sound means run or answer. Give them company while they choose.